Hola, chicos. Glad to see you guys. I haven't connected with the level 4s in a while here, so it's nice to see all these names hopping in here. ¿Cómo están, chicos? ¿Bien? ¿Cómo están pasando los días aquí? We all hanging in there? We all doing okay? Well, I'm glad to see that there's a bunch of you here. So what I'm doing today, for my students, this is my webpage, and see, Sophie, yeah, I feel that. For Srta Schaeber students, you're welcome to view this as well. This is my calendar on my webpage. If you look at the sidebar here, Spanish 4, and then you would click on the calendar. So what we're going to go over today, we're going to look at pages 15 and 16, which was more practice with preterite and imperfect. And then we're going to look at pages 21 and 22. So those pages should be done in the packet. And then we're going to talk about these assay time expressions, which is a new grammar concept that we're going to talk about. There's notes for it in your packet as well, and I'll be going over that with you. But hopefully you're all doing okay at home with the preterite and imperfect. For my students, I sent out an email yesterday, and it had a link in there for some additional preterite versus imperfect practice. It's a quiz through Spanish Dict, so that's a good tool for you to use as well, just to see whether or not, you're kind of understanding these concepts here and being able to use them in context. All right, so let's go to page 15. And again, these answer keys are all on my website as well. I uploaded them, but here is page 15 in your packet. So if you take a look, these were with the verbs that changed meaning, right? So we know that if you look, let's see, where is it here? Where are my notes on verbs that change meaning? Well, they're on the first page. We have, sorry, I'm probably making you guys dizzy here. Srta Schaeber went over this with you guys on Thursday, that you have the 7 verbs that change meaning. And we know that in the imperfect, these verbs carry their original meaning, right? So whatever the verbs are in the imperfect, that is what they normally mean. I think the gang's all here, Dorgarita. I think, Damar, are you here too, Dulce? But in the preterite, these verbs have a different meaning, and there is an acronym that you can use if it helps you to remember it. If not, then we just kind of got to remember which verbs change meaning. So, sí, hola, dulce. Okay, so the verbs that would change meaning, we have haber, means there was or there were, like an incident occurred, versus in the imperfect, you have haber, meaning there was or there were, but now in terms of description. So hubo is telling us that an event occurred, right? Then no querer means refused. Tener in the preterite, again, this is preterite, means received. Conocer in the preterite means you met someone. Saber, like supo or supe in the yo form, means I found out. Querer in the preterite means tried or attempted to do something, and then poder or no poder means you managed to. So if you can memorize these meanings of these 7 verbs in the preterite, then you know that in the imperfect, the verbs are carrying their original meaning. So I'm going to go back to page 15 here. And these were the verbs that were being used on this page. Sorry. Okay. So take a look, and I wrote down in red what the verb, how it was being used in the sentence, so what the definition of the verb would have been based on how it was being used. So like in number 1, en la clase, Pablo nunca sabía la respuesta. And also in green, I've underlined any clue expressions, right? Nunca is a trigger for imperfect. Victor, this is Spanish 4 right now. So Spanish 3 is Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You're welcome to stay. This is kind of what you guys are doing as well. But this is Spanish 4 right now. So we will be back with Spanish 3 mañana. Okay. In number 2, though, you are using saber to mean found out. So like I found out yesterday. Ayer would be your clue word there, right? Telling us that it's preterite. Conocíamos in number 3 versus conoció. So in number 3, it means that we knew all of the roads or like paths to Spain. Versus in number 4, it means met. So yeah, take a look at those. Does anybody have any questions on what they're seeing here? How the verbs are being used in context. Again, with 12 and 13, the difference between tuvo, which would be preterite, and then tenía, you have it as teníamos here, imperfect. Tener in the preterite means received, and then tener in imperfect means you had. So in number 13, before we had 2 cousins in Colombia. And then for the last 2, 14 and 15, the difference between querer in the imperfect and querer in the preterite. Quise would mean I tried. So I tried to scream, but I lost my voice, is what that's saying there. Are we good on this page, guys? Give me a thumbs up. Comment in a thumbs up if you are good and ready for me to move on to 16. Hola, Julia. All right, thanks. I got some thumbs up. All right, I'm going to page 16 then. So this was another page that you were assigned. Gracias, chicos. And so here we had to translate based on how the sentence was, or how the verb was being used in the sentence. So she didn't want to spend every summer at the beach. Now, all I have to think about here is, does my verb carry the meaning that I already am familiar with? If it does, then I'm using imperfect. But if it's a new meaning, then it's preterite, right? So like in number 1, I'm using imperfect because querer typically means want. So she didn't want, no quería pasar cada verano a la playa. And again, you have that trigger expression. What would be the trigger expression in sentence number 1 that tells me I should be using imperfect anyway? Can anybody tell me what the trigger expression is in number 1? Or my indicator? What tells me I should be using imperfect in sentence number 1? Sí, bien, Timoteo. Every summer, cada, right? And Sophie, Lanessa, Gabby, nice job, guys. Yeah, so every summer tells me it's repeated, right? So then it's imperfect. But number 2, if I look at that one, it says we received, sí, bien, chicos, bien, guille y dulce. We received a telegram. So tener does not typically mean received, which means we're using it now in the preterite because the preterite carries the new meaning. So we received a telegram, tuvimos un telegrama con las noticias buenas. So again, as I was doing this, all I was thinking about here was, does the sentence use the original meaning or is it carrying a new meaning? If it's the new meaning, then I should be conjugating my verb in the preterite. If it's the original meaning, then I'm using imperfect. Let's see if there's any ones I want to point out here specifically. Number 6 uses both, right? It uses both the preterite and the imperfect. So you have, he tried to do stand-up, which is, or he tried to stand up, but he couldn't. So he tried is querer in the preterite, quiso, and then he couldn't, or he wasn't able to, is poder in the imperfect tense. What does poder mean, guys, when we use it in preterite? Can you tell me what poder means when we use poder in the preterite tense? What's the definition of that verb in preterite? In imperfect, it was able to. But in the preterite, what does poder mean? Oh, am I frozen, guys? Not getting any comments here. Oh, thank you, Dorgarita. Okay. Yeah, Dorgarita, you are correct. Yeah, you are correct. It's managed to. Tried is querer, and then poder in the preterite means you managed to, or like you succeeded in doing something. So that's how it's being used in number 10. When finally the teacher asked me the last question, I succeeded in answering. So yo pude contestar. I managed to answer. I succeeded in doing it. All right. Do you guys have any questions on page 16? I got 2 other pages to go over with you, and then I want to go to our assay expressions. Give me a thumbs up if we're good on 16. Or if not, let me know a number that you would like me to go over. All right. Timoteo gave me the thumbs up. I'm moving on. All right. Gracias, Timoteo. We're going to go to page 21. So you had pages later in the packet now because we wanted to wait to go over the preterite versus imperfect. Oh, gracias, chicos. Okay. So using preterite and imperfect in context. Now, what I wrote next to each one was the reason, basically why I would have been conjugating my verb in preterite or imperfect. So I have a lot of description at the beginning here, which would be imperfect. A repeated action, right? Like todos los días le gustaba, every day. He liked to play with his friend Jose. So again, repeated actions obviously are imperfect tense. That whole first paragraph, right, is all imperfect. And that makes sense, right? Because this is a story. And typically when we set the scene, right, that would be the S of waters, right, setting or description. That would be imperfect. Now, I have tuvo starred because if you look at it, it says, un día Benito y José estaban jugando. So one day they were playing in the park. That is like the ongoing action there when José tuvo un accidente. That has to be preterite because it is an interrupting action. You can think of it as a one-time thing, right? It doesn't necessarily translate to he received an accident, right? Because tener is a meaning-changing verb, but it's a one-time thing. It interrupts what was going on. I can like snap my finger. I can plot it on a point as a point. I know when it happens, so that has to be preterite there. Later in that paragraph, we have abia, right, which is there was or there were. This is description, so there was blood everywhere. This is a graphic story here. But that is description. It's what I see, so that would be preterite. You had Schaeber at the end of that paragraph, which was translating to what you knew how to do. If it was translating as found out, then we would be using supo. But it says Jose started to cry and Benito didn't know what to do, which would be imperfect. Deciding, that's always a completed action. Like Benito decided, decidió llamar. That's a decision he made. It's a one-time thing. So that would be completed, which should be preterite. Remember, for this one here, this is telling time, right? It says, even though it was 3 in the afternoon, telling time is imperfect. If I'm saying something happened at a specific time, then it's preterite, right, guys? Okay. So check the other ones down here. Then you have like a list of completed actions. The last paragraph. Don't forget that for J verbs like decir, if it's in the ellos form, you're dropping the I, right? So Jose le dijeron. He told, or they told him, thanks to the man, and returned to play on the playground. Patio de recreo. Typically, yes, unless it's saying like, Sophie, your question I'm answering now, when you see decidir, it is always preterite. I would say it's one of those verbs like empezar is usually always preterite. Terminar is usually always preterite. Llegar and salir are typically always preterite. Same thing like decidir. It's usually always a completed action, unless you were saying like, I don't know, he always decided to play with blocks when he was a kid. Then it would be showing it as repeated. But 9 times out of 10, just like those other verbs, llegar, salir, empezar, terminar, decidir, they would typically be preterite. Where it says, su madre no tenía esposa. Let's see. Oh, right here. Okay. Su madre no tenía esposo y tenía que trabajar mucho. Why is it imperfect? So it's saying his mom didn't have a husband and had to work a lot. So there, this is, de nada, Sophie. This is basically our verbs that change meaning, right? And we know that tener in the imperfect translates to had, whereas tener in the preterite is received. This is sort of an exception here, which is why I started, because tener un accidente is more of like an expression, and it interrupts the action that was happening before it. But here, you wouldn't say his mom didn't receive a husband, probably, and didn't receive to go to work a lot. That doesn't make sense there. So for how tener is being used here, we need to use it in the imperfect tense because of the meaning of the verb in the imperfect. Does that make sense? Gracias, Jacobo. Keep up the great educational work. I'm doing my best. Hopefully you are keeping up with your college work too. Hope you're doing well. Miss you. All right. Does this page look okay? Does anybody have any other questions on this page here? Give me a thumbs up if you want me to go to 22. Bien, Lanessa. Can I go ahead, guys? All right, I think I am going to flip it to 22. This was the last page in the packet that you were looking at. So if I look at this page, Timoteo's always got me with the go ahead there. Thanks, guys. All right. So it says, lee el pasaje entero con cuidado primero y luego seleccione el tiempo verbal apropiado. Oh, gracias, chicos. Hola, Santiago. I didn't see you come in here. ¿Cómo estás? Okay. So, again, you just had another little paragraph here. And again, I try to write the reasoning as to why you're using preterite or imperfect. In red, I underline any trigger expressions or indicator expressions in green. And just check to see here if your verbs are conjugated correctly. So the first verb, right, hacía buen tiempo, weather, always, always, always imperfect, right? There I have decidir again, so it's yo decidí, I decided, and it is preterite, which, sticks to our rule that we just talked about, that typically decidir is going to be conjugated in the preterite because it's showing a completed action. You decided to do it, and then it was over with. Here, the next one, antes de salir de casa, llamó a mi amigo Guillermo. I called my friend Guillermo, so that would be preterite because it's something you completed. Bien, Santiago. Bien, gracias. For the quería there, it is being used to mean wanted. He wanted Guillermo, what does it say? Before leaving the house, he called I called my friend Guillermo to see if he wanted to accompany me. He wasn't busy. That is like a state, right? Estaba ocupado. Or you can think of it as sort of like a description of what he was like at the time. So he wasn't busy and he had some free time. So he accepted my invitation, which would be completed. We met, Guillermo y yo nos encontramos en la esquina. We met on the corner of Avenida Colombia and Calle Mayor. Donde empezamos, again, empezar is typically one of those verbs that is preterite because it's showing the, start of an action, where we started our paseo. What is a paseo, guys? Think of the expression dar un paseo, donde empezamos nuestro paseo. Do you guys remember what that word means? Dar un paseo is the full expression, but it's saying empezamos nuestro paseo. Yeah. Dorgarita, I think that is wrong there. Okay, well, first, yes, you guys are right. It's a walk, right? So, dar un paseo. Are you talking about llamó? Oh, I'm sorry, wait. Why does yo le pregunto end in O, not E? Because it's wrong there. You are correct, Dorgarita. I think I did that with llamó also. I think that this should be, let's see if I could handle correcting this and at the same time, let's see. So I think this one should be pregunté, right, with an E. Also, does this make sense? Antes de salir de casa llamé, right? I called my friend Guillermo. Because you're saying it's like to call on the phone, so it should be llamé. So good catch there, Dorgarita. I think that both of those should be in the yo form, right? So it's saying, upon passing by the store, I asked Guillermo if he wanted to enter. He said, yes. What does enseguida mean, guys? Enseguida is a trigger expression as well for preterite, which is why the next verb is in preterite. Enseguida nosotras entramos. Do we know that expression? Enseguida. Enseguida means right away. So it's saying right away we entered the store. And then había is talking about the description of what we see upon entering the store. And finally, I chose a jacket, which would be a completed action, right? All right, does that make sense? Do you guys have any other questions on these pages? This is tricky, using these in context here, but the more practice you have with it, the better you will get, the more you'll be able to understand when you're using preterite and imperfect in context there. But good catch there, Dorgarita, again, with the form of that it should have been in the yo form. All right, give me a thumbs up that you're ready to go on to our notes here on our hace expressions. Are we ready to move on here? Okay. You need to go in your packet, go to page, let's see, 17. Página 17, por favor. And this page is all notes on the hace expressions, hace time expressions, which we have done in the past. You've done them last year a little bit. These expressions, there's different structures to the hace expressions, and we use them in different scenarios. So if I look at hace expression number 1, you might want to highlight or underline the parts that I have highlighted here, because that is what's going to help you remember which expression or formula to use in the correct context. So for the first hace expression, if I wanted to express how long ago, and ago would be your keyword there, something happened, I use hace plus time plus que plus a verb in the preterite. So if I look at the example, hace un mes que llegué aquí, I arrived here a month ago. Because the verb after the time expression is used in the preterite, it translates to ago. All right, so that's the first one. You have hace plus time plus que plus the preterite. That tells me how long ago something happened. But if I wanted to express the duration of an action, I would use hace plus time plus que plus the present tense. And this is, I think, the form of this that we've used before. So if I look at the example, hace 3 años que vivo aquí, that is present tense. And that means I have been living here for 3 years. So the second formula is when I'm trying to express a duration of an action. So in the example, the duration of how long I have been living here. So duration is present tense. Ago is preterite. We have two more. For the hace, to tell how long, how much time has been since the occurrence of a past action, we use hace plus time plus que plus no, and then the present tense. So if I was going to say, it's been 3 years since I lived here, since would be like your clue word here. You would say, hace 3 años que no vivo aquí. It's been 3 years since I have lived here. So again, if you put a no in front of the present tense, then it would translate to time since something has happened. And then your last one, your last hace expression is when we're using hacía with the imperfect. Your verb is in the imperfect, the hacía is in the imperfect, and your verb is in the imperfect. And then this tells me the duration of an ongoing action in the past, right? So hacía plus time plus que plus the imperfect. If I look at my example, hacía 3 años que vivía aquí. I had been living there for 3 years. So again, this is telling me the duration of an ongoing action. So page 17 is going to be like your reference sheet when you go and do your work with this later. What I do want to show you though is I want to show you page 18. And let's see if I do this. Okay, so these are what these questions would be asking. They're each using a different hace expression from the previous page. So for number 1, it says, ¿Cuánto tiempo hace que viviste? Now this is using hace plus time plus que plus the preterite. So if I go back to this page here, hace and the preterite translates to ago, right? It's the first hace expression. So how long ago did you live here is what that's saying. ¿Cuánto tiempo hace que vives? So now I have hace and the present tense. When I'm using hace plus the present, it tells me how long something has been happening for. So how long have you been living? Guillermo, no worries. This is Spanish 4. I'll be back with Spanish 3 mañana, so no worries. And then the last one here, guys, number 3, it says, ¿Cuánto tiempo hacía que vivías? This, again, would be the last structure on the previous page, and it's hacía and vivía. So how long had you been living here? It tells me the duration of an ongoing action. Does that make sense? Can you guys give me a thumbs up or something if you were able to follow that? Basically, again, what I need to do is I need to just look at my structures and I need to look at the key parts. So if I have the preterite, it's ago. If I have the present tense, it tells me the duration of the action. If I have no in the present tense, it translates to since. And then down here, if you have hacía and the imperfect, it tells me the duration of an ongoing action. So you're going to use this page 17, as a reference. I will, I don't have copies of these on my webpage, but I'll make sure I put this page and page 18 on my website as well. And then what are you guys doing tonight for homework? Let's figure that out. So on my website, Spanish 4, if I look at my calendar. Okay, so tonight you don't really have to do anything, but tomorrow you're going to do pages 19 and 20, and those will be using these hace time expressions. So you want to make sure you're referring to your notes on page 18 to help you do that. And then Srta Schaeber will go over this with you and review those answers on Thursday in her live. And on Thursday, you're also going to do page 23 in the packet, and then we'll pretty much be done with the packet. We're assigning you a quizzes to do on Friday just to kind of see where you guys are at with that, and then we'll get some feedback. And then next week, we are starting Don Quixote, which I'm pretty excited about. I think you guys are going to enjoy reading that. So thanks for tuning in. For my Spanish 4 students, don't forget that tomorrow I'm going to try and connect with you guys on Zoom. So if you're available from 3 to 3:30, you can pop in. You don't have to stay there the whole time, but just so we can connect. And if you guys have any questions, I can answer it that way as well. But it was good to be with everyone here for a little bit. I hope you're all staying well and staying healthy and keeping up with your Espanol. All right, guys, thanks for joining. I will see you soon. Adios.